Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Precision GTM in Action. This is a webinar series with Factors.ai and LinkedIn Sales Navigator team. And we have Abhay, who is head of LinkedIn Sales Navigator sales in India and APAC here to talk about how Precision GTM works. Hi, Abhay. Welcome back for the second episode as well. Great to have you here. And this time from Singapore. Last time we were at Gurgaon.
Thanks, Sri. Great to be back in this episode. Loved what we spoke about the last time round. I'm sure our audience has got the most of it. Can't be more excited to see what is it that we can talk about today that excites our sales professional community.
Thank you. Hey, all, just to give you some context about what we talked about in the first episode, it's primarily about why LinkedIn matters, specifically for sales professionals from India when they are selling from India to other geographies or even within India. From a B2B sales perspective, why LinkedIn matters, why trust building on LinkedIn matters, and also the starting of the framework around like how do you identify high intent accounts, who are the ones you target within those accounts, and how do you start targeting them. Here we go a little more deeper. From the earlier part where we laid down the foundations and the structure, now we are going into each and every aspect about like how do you actually use LinkedIn Sales Navigator better to run your sales engine and derive value from LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and most importantly also measure what works, what doesn't work, so that you can continuously iterate and get better. So thanks a lot for making time again, Abhay. So the episode starts at a very simple level. Is like what we are looking at is like how do we get deeper into the account IQ features and buyer intent features within LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Last time we spoke about like how do you map the list of accounts, how do you focus on the top 5 accounts or top 5% accounts which matter for us. Now we want to get a little deeper into seeing a live demo of how the account IQ actually works within LinkedIn Sales Navigator and how do we actually use it from an expert's point of view.
No, thanks. Before I actually dive into the product, I think it's going to be important for the audience to understand a couple of things at a macro level. I think when I talk to most of the CROs and sales leaders in the world and in India, the one question that I always ask them is what motivates you, what keeps you going? And I think the constant answer that I hear is I want to grow fast and I want to grow profitably. The next logical question is what makes your team happy? People in your team in sales, what will keep them ticking? And I think being in sales for the last couple of decades, I think I resonate with that as much. And I think the constant answers that I hear is I want my team to hit quota. I want to make sure that they make money and they get rewarded and recognized for everything that they've done fast and everything that they're doing differently so that they are better than the competition in the eyes of the customer. Now, LinkedIn, with those two things, those two questions in mind, my next obvious thing is what can LinkedIn provide when you partner with us, right? So if I look at LinkedIn as a platform, we are roughly about 1.3 billion people on the platform, 1.3 billion members, as we call them on the platform. We have about 70 million companies that are listed on the platform. So if you want to find out about the companies that you want to go after, if you want to find out the people in those companies that you want to go after, if you want to find out commonalities, I think there's no better platform to be on. And therefore, the power of Sales Navigator becomes so much important for somebody to get to those two objectives that I talked about when you think about it from a sales leader's lens and when you think about it from a sales professional's lens, right? I can go, let me start presenting my screen to just give you a view of what would that look like once you land on Sales Navigator. Give me a second. And Sri, let me know once you see my screen.
Yeah. For context, people, sales is a very hard job. And it's not something like which comes naturally very easy because the clients you are going after, the people who you are tracking, as if getting that information about them, having that context and reaching out in the right time is very hard. Most of the times people run sales in a more mechanical aspect where they kind of cold call a lot of people, cold email a lot of people, or even without context, they try to connect with someone and it's wasted effort, it's wasted hours in the day. What we are here to discuss about with our Precision GTM framework is primarily how to do sales better, and what are the tools which come around that to make you help you run your sales efficiently, to hit your quota efficiently, and also scale profitability as profitably, as Abhay mentioned. Yes, I'm able to see your screen and it looks perfect.
Perfect. So I couldn't agree more with what you said as a context, Ray. And I think deals are getting stalled, deals are getting tougher. The macro is not helping either. And therefore, if you want to make money, if you want to hit your quota, uh, you need to do things differently. You need to do more with less. And I think that is what Sales Navigator is all about. What you see in my on the screen, I think if every person in the audience has a LinkedIn profile, this is their LinkedIn landing page. The only difference that you do when you get into Sales Navigator is a little icon that you see on the right side on the top, which takes you to Sales Navigator. When you go from this button to Sales Navigator, this is your LinkedIn version of work. This is what opens up, and this is my version of Sales Navigators. Some of the things that you're seeing here is going to be specific to my business, which may or may not be relevant entirely up to you, right?
Yeah.
For your business. So what I wanted to show you today is when you specifically think about prioritization. As I said, we have about um, 70 million companies on the platform globally. And if I think about just India, there are about upwards of 3 million organizations. It's a very, very large pool of accounts that you could possibly go after.
Got it.
What are the intent signals that you would get immediately, which is the most important thing for you to prioritize, is the first thing that comes onto somebody's mind. And what I wanted to start off with is just letting you know how this look and feel of this page looks like. Everything that you see on the top, there are two important filters to note. One is called the account filter, which is where I would step in right now. Accounts is by definition is the account, and the lead filter is the individual within those accounts. So these are the two terminologies that one needs to be looking at.
Got it.
I'll quickly go into the account filter. And this is how it looks like. This is a list of things that you can slice and dice on the Sales Navigator platform. There are a couple of things that are important. On the left-hand side is the company attributes, basis which you would search. Now, I'm interested in looking at organizations which are in enterprise, anything that is 1,000 people and above. I just simply go on the tab, press these three icons. I get about 45,000 companies that are fitting this criteria. But I can't go after 45,000 in the universe. Suppose I want to go after only organizations that are sitting out of the US. So I go to the next tab, which is headquarter location. I click United States. This list drops down to 13,000. I am very specifically now wanting to figure out how do I bring this down to the person and the persona and the industry that I care about the most. I could simply go ahead and look at the industry. Suppose I want to look at the industry, which is professional services, if that's the industry that I care about the most. And there are multiple other industries that you can choose from. I say professional services, that 13,000 drops down to 1.5 thousand. The next obvious thing, Shri, would be for everybody who's listening to this podcast would be, I have the list of accounts. I know where they're headquartered. I know the industry. This is what the company tells me is the most likely sweet spot for you to go after. But the next thing that they also tell you is who to sell to. Now, department headcount is a very, very important filter. If I just simply go ahead and say that I want to look at people in IT, as an example, I could simply say that you need to have your department headcount should be at least 100 in IT. It gives me down to about 632 results. So I can go and filter down. The reason I'm saying this is I can go and keep filtering down and narrowing down my result as much as possible. Right now, once I
And
do
in
that,
live, it actually immediately keeps changing the end results in terms of like in live, it's like you can actually see how the funnel actually works down. So like if you go after just generally companies of a certain headcount variation, how many numbers from 13,000, then from 13,000 it comes down when you put a geography filter or a headquarter filter, then from an industry filter it comes further down, and then when you actually put a kind of a information technology headcount should be less than 100, it actually comes down to 632 results, or you can do more than 100 as well, and like that you
I
can
could do
actually
more than
bring that
100
down.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I just now take you back to this section of this view, there are two things that are very important for a salesperson. The first is, what do I already have as information? So what companies are already sitting in my CRM, the companies that I already know about. So can I filter the companies that I already have and have a view in these industries and these states, or can I exclude them to see the white space? Because
Got it.
no company in the world will possibly have 70 million companies in their CRM. So it's a very good button to have and a filter to have, which takes you to the white space of the list of accounts that you could possibly go after. I think this is one of the very unique things that we have. The second most important thing, I think, is buyer intent. And we'll talk a little bit more about this. We did touch upon this last time, but companies which are not every company that is out there in the market is the right persona and the right company to go after immediately. So there are signals that you get on the platform based on how they're already researching about you today. And that signal, whether it is moderate or high, should be the one that should tell you that this week or this month, these are the companies that you should go after, right? So I could simply click here and the number should come down, saying that these are the companies. So this is all these companies who are wanting to engage with LinkedIn, and therefore this number did not come down substantially, which is a very good thing for me if I'm looking at it from my view. But this is how it looks like right now.
Thanks a
You
lot for
said,
this information. Just one clarification, and this is something which is also very important, which I just realized when I was saying. A lot of customers and even sales teams, when they use us, they just generally use a standard LinkedIn or they use LinkedIn Premium. They go to LinkedIn Premium, they open up their messaging or they open up their LinkedIn connection request and then they connect and then they go after. But here in Sales Navigator, it opens up a totally new view within LinkedIn itself. So LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a power option on top of LinkedIn where it gives you filtration options. But more importantly, it also connects with your CRM, which is your HubSpot or your Salesforce, and then says companies in your CRM or companies not in your CRM. So that if you are a sales executive going after a new space, you don't need to go after companies which are already there in your CRM. You want to go after new companies. On the other hand, sometimes you want to go after very specific companies like closed lost accounts or churn lost accounts, so that you have a very significant direction in terms of who you want to reach out. Because companies which are already aware of your product or your company, which have been in your CRM, that makes a lot of difference for then salespeople to filter and then they go after. This is something which is very unique for the audience to take note of. The second thing also, Abhay, which I wanted to understand, buyer intent, moderate or high intent is a great signal. But is there how does this get actually generated? Where does LinkedIn get the data? How do I say that for any salesperson using this data, he can have confidence on this is the right buyer intent signal for him?
right. Let me show this by an example. Let me go to the home page and take the example of my parent company. It's I'm going ahead and looking at the homepage of the organization that I want to go after. Right now, before I go to the question that you asked around buyer intent, I think one very important thing that we wanted to show the audience also was account IQ. And account IQ, if I have to think about account IQ, is going to be once you've identified the account through all the filters of the accounts that you have, you need to figure out what should be the talking point, what are the challenges that this company has, what are the strengths, what are the competitive landscape that they're operating in. So it's pretty much a SWOT analysis that is done by LinkedIn on the platform and presented to you as a sales professional. So in a very layman term, it gives you things like, how does this company make money? What would be the strategic priorities of this company? What are the business challenges that the company has talked about or investors have talked about is coming out in the press, and there are sources of each of these that you can refer to. competitive landscape is something that I talked about. If you're interested to find out about how the headcount in site is changing, if you're selling to engineering, is it going down? Is it going up? If you're selling to a sales team, how's that trend looking? So it gives you headcount insights as well. Apart from that, it also tells you the key people in this organization on the right. And what is it that they're saying, the executive voices. So you know not just what is there out by what the company is saying, but what the CEO of the company is saying, what the CFO of the company is saying, or anybody else. Coming back to specifically the buyer intent piece, right? So you asked a question around buyer intent. I'll quickly come here on the intent. There are quite a few signals that we capture. The signals are every time there's a high buyer intent and a low buyer intent or a moderate buyer intent, there are about 122 different attributes that we look at. But some of the most common ones that somebody looks at is if I, as a sales professional, has engaged or reached out to anybody in that organization that I'm going after, and have they responded back to me. So in-mail acceptance rate is one such filter. The second is once I run a campaign or a sales campaign or a marketing campaign, do people from this company land and act on the campaign? Are they interested? Are they engaging with the content that I'm showing them to the marketing campaign? That is a very high intent signal that they're interested in what I'm showing them. The third highest intent signal is once you have consumed the content, are you actually coming back to the profile of the individuals in the company? So in this example, are people from this organization coming back to look at people from LinkedIn and figure out who we are, right? So these are some things which are the top three reasons why intent signal would be the highest weighted. And that changes on a monthly basis, sometimes on a weekly basis, and gives you a very good propensity model on which account should you prioritize.
Thanks a lot for sharing this, Abhay. One thing for the audience, for them to notice, like this goes very deep, and this is something like core data only LinkedIn has. LinkedIn knows who's coming to your profile pages. LinkedIn knows who are the ones who are engaging with your company pages. LinkedIn also knows like how's the likelihood of email acceptance from when you send them an email. InMail is there where like you can send messages and you can send emails from LinkedIn itself. All these are all signals which LinkedIn is capturing on a weekly and a monthly basis, and also coming back and telling you like these companies are the ones which are likely to respond to you because they have already looked at your profile page, they have engaged with your company page, and they are also likely to respond to an email or accept an email when you send them. This is gold dust for you if you're a salesperson, because it's not just a kind of like narrowing into segments that you can also do it in Zoom Info, you can also do it in few other sales engagement platforms. But knowing who's actually engaging with my website, company page profile on LinkedIn, knowing people whether they will reply to me on email or not is very, very important. And this is impossible to get in any other platform. So hence this buyer intent which LinkedIn gives you is something which no other platform can give. And then you can build on top of this your targeted precision GTM as we speak here to go after the right set of accounts. Thanks for taking us through that, Abhay. Looking forward to see more on what we
No,
can do with it.
I couldn't agree more. So once you have this dial which tells you it is a high signal, I think the next question is how do I act on it? And everything that you talked about, LinkedIn is the only company that can actually provide you intelligence around that. And you can go specifically to either that individual who's shown interest or a group of individuals who are most likely the ones who could be showing interest. So that's definitely a unique secret sauce that LinkedIn has based on the activity that is happening on the platform.
That's great. Next step. Account IQ is one level, but more importantly, account is only one aspect of any salesperson's life. He's actually going to talk to a person or a individual on the other side of the thing. What is LinkedIn doing at a personal level mapping or at a lead level mapping?
I completely agree. And I think this is just the first step, and a lot of people would do a lot more research. So if you find out an account is good, you need to go deeper into that account. And one of the most important things, apart from all the research you will do, is research about the individuals, and you will figure out a way to reach out to them, which is a question that you're asking, and a very, very valid question. Every salesperson uh, tries to do a couple of things at the start of this cycle, right? At the start of the sales cycle. One, they try and map out which functions do they have to go after. Once you if you're selling to an HRMS solution, you know that you have to speak to the HR leader. You know that you have to speak to the procurement leader. You know that there's going to be a time that you'll have to speak to the CIO. You'll have to speak to the legal if it reaches that point in time. So you map out the different personas that you care about, and once you do that and feed that information into LinkedIn Sales Navigator, you can do that. You can feed up to 5 different personas that you're going after into Sales Navigator. And then Sales Navigator, based on all the network intelligence that it has, will throw up the most likely people that you should go after in those personas. So if you see this specific filter this page that I'm showing, it is a page that has a title called Relationship Explorer. I have put a persona which is CXO. There's a set of definitions that I have in this persona. I've created this for myself. Based on this, it tells me that these are the top 8 people that I should go after as the first starting point. And there's a reason behind why these people are important. They could be a past colleague of mine. They could be somebody that I know. They could be somebody who follows my company, and therefore the propensity of them to react and respond to me is better. There are multiple, and there could be a past customer. So the multiple things allow me to gives me enough confidence that yes, if I do reach out to them, they will respond back, right? So this is one visual representation of everybody that you need to know in that account, which is so important. Once you do that, I think every person in sales will
Just
realize that,
one point which I just wanted to step back as well, and
yeah,
also even kind of why taking one step further into the whole lead IQ intelligence and why LinkedIn is important here. For salespeople in the audience, one thing which you care about is knowing which companies to reach out. So you filter it out, companies in your CRM, not in your CRM, in a specific industry. You go a little further into companies showing intent, following your pages, etc. Then once you get there, every time any enterprise sales guy says is like, you are telling me Amazon is showing interest, you are telling me Infosys is showing interest. There are, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people there. Who do I actually talk to? How do I know that I have to talk to a person? This is something unique to that particular salesperson. The CEO of the company might be connected to the CEO of the other company, but me as an account executive or a SDR in that company, I may not be connected to the CEO, but I would also like to see what is the map to the person. Who is the person within that company in my buyer persona who I can best reach out to at this point in time so that I can go and convert? Who are the other people who matter, who I may not be directly connected, but at least he follows my company. At least he's connected to a senior executive in my company, so that when I reach out to them, it won't be a kind of a totally cold call, or he's not going to just brush off like, I don't even know your particular company. He's going to at least pick up the call, or he's going to respond to a message, and the chances of conversion is better, because sales is a hunting job. You are looking for breadcrumbs across the line to know who you have to go after, and also leads where the conversion rates will be the best. And LinkedIn, with the people IQ and also with regard to this relationship map, it gives you a very, very clear understanding of who you actually can go after. And this is something which is wonderful, Abhay. And some of these things, it's kind of intuitive. Sometimes sales teams always think that they have the handle over it, but when they actually see something like this in action is when they can also see, like, as a sales leader, I'm able to see like how I can actually need to train my own salespeople a lot better in terms of understanding the lead IQ and understanding LinkedIn Sales Navigator better, so that they get the maximum output on what they get.
yeah. As a sales leader myself, when I go into an account and have a review of an account, the first thing that I do is ask my team members, tell me who do you know and who's mapped to whom. And that is where org charts and relationship map is so important. And once you see it in a visual format, what I showed you right now is a relationship explorer. This is a list of people that that the sales navigator has thrown up to you. If you find them useful, you save them, which is what I just did. and then it gives you a visual representation of things that you can do. I know that Judson Althoff, for example, I can just quickly drag and drop him here. I can probably, just make an org chart of different people that I know in the organization that I care about, um, and they could just be plotted here, and I can then share it with multiple people in the
How does
organization
the
so that
plotting work? It says like who reports to who directly.
it is up to you to figure out who that individual would most likely report to. For example, right now, Judson Althoff is the CEO. I know he would be top of hierarchy. Depending on how I keep engaging with this account, based on certain designations that the system automatically throws based on CXO level mapping, I would be able to map. But the real thing is, Sales Navigator will never tell you this is the org chart that you have. It is going to be up to you to go ahead and validate this information. And once you reach out and speak to a couple of more people, you know that this is a validated
This is the
org
map.
chart. This is
Got.
this is a
And
right
this
map, and this is there's a specific reason why we're saying this is not an org chart. This is a relationship map. These are the people that you want to build a relationship with. So you choose the org chart and the relationship map that you want to have, and you can create multiple such maps, because in large enterprise you would have different team members that you have to map, different opportunities within the same company that you are going after, which means that you could be talking to different hierarchies and different individuals. So you could create multiple such maps and tear them up, and you could even give them titles as to, is this, what role do they play? Is this person a decision maker? Is this person a champion? Is this person just an influencer? So you could, things that you would, as you were rightly saying, Sai, these are things that would be there in your mind, but once you see it in a visual representation, I think it comes to life. And once it is shared with every team member who's supposed to be mapping people in this account, it's a collective effort. Sales is always a collective effort. The largest deals, the biggest deals, the most valuable deals for every company gets built by a team of people that work together. So
now
I
comes to the
think
second question here, and actually it leads into the next thing. I mean, you have the whole relationship map, you have all the people, and there's a 10% buying committee. In your experience, and also with regard to how customers use LinkedIn Sales Navigator, where do you start? Because that's one place where I see a lot of sales teams getting stuck, especially in the startup SaaS space, because they are companies which are like suddenly growing. It's more than $10 million. They've got a Series B funding. They got a new sales leader, sales team, all of them have to go. But still, the company is small. It's $10 million as a revenue. Might look great in the startup scene, but it's not great in the overall scheme of things. It's still a small company. Processes are young, brand understanding is young. What will you advise to a young set of SDR or sales leaders? How do they start mapping into a particular set of buyer personas? Where do they get started? How do they go deeper?
I think the basic principle remains the same. You need to start with identifying who are the individuals who you can first reach out to, and why should they be talking to you. So I think if you're an SDR or an AE or a farmer who's trying to get into an account, you need to find that foothold, the person who you can become and convert into a champion, who can then open the doors for you for multiple other people that you need to interact with. But I would strongly suggest to go top down. The higher you go and speak, the two things that will happen. First is that you will prepare a lot more. If I have to go and speak to the CEO of a new startup, which is a $10 million company, and I'm talking to somebody who's now aggressively wanting to grow, the questions that they will have in their minds, the things that they would want to do, I would have to prepare myself thoroughly before I do that. And before I reach that individual, I would have to have champions in the company who can give me pointers of what I should speak. And then the things that you should do outside that whole situation. You can go through account IQ, you could read a lot of things on the internet, but preparation is going to be absolutely important. And you build an org chart which is as wide as possible and as deep as possible. It might not be a very big company, but to your point, Shri, uh, we have seen reaching and speaking to at least five, six, seven people in each function that I spoke about initially is going to be the most important way to be the differentiating force when you're thinking about tapping into a customer compared to your competition. A lot of salespeople speak to one person or two person, and that limits their ability to influence what they're wanting to do.
Got it. So yeah, I think this is also a very important point because a lot of times when we see sales being done, they prioritize volume over quality and also depth. So what this means is like they ask like number of accounts reached over a month or over a week. It can be 100 accounts or 200 accounts. And they also hit through limits. It's like even if you're 100 accounts, if there are 5 decision makers in each of those companies, that's like 500 connections. You don't have time to actually research deeply into what each person is doing and connecting and making a very clear map internally to like who you have to connect, how you have to connect, whether it's on email, LinkedIn, phone, multiple other touch points, including who else can give you a warm introduction from LinkedIn. All of this gets missed. On the other hand, what you're saying is like go deep, take a smaller list of accounts, and for each accounts map the each of the key decision makers correctly, start from top to bottom, and more importantly also for each one of them kind of like find ways like at least 7 to 10 touch points so that you can actually see that you have warmed up the account in the right way, you have also worked through the account in the right way so that you can convert the best out of it. That's
I
very
agree.
good insight.
And if you're representing your company, think about it as if you're the brand of the company. You would not want to spam your customer base. You would want to show up as if your CEO is showing up. So if you're an SDR, put yourself in the shoes of your CEO when your CEO would walk into a meeting. That's what your customers expect to hear from you. So be the brand that you represent. I think that's going to be most important. And when you start thinking like that, it's going to be a very different approach that you'll take.
That's a very good insight, and that's something which I wouldn't. I mean, like show up like the way how a CEO would show up in terms of
Yeah.
preparation, in terms of connects, and in terms of how you would actually position your company in front, and that makes a lot of difference. One thing which also came into an idea where, with regard to Sales Navigator itself, is like, let's say an account executive is trying to reach out to CFO in the company. So this is a kind of a company which sells financing software like receivable software, payable software, which is there, and he's trying to connect to the CFO. And he also sees like he's not directly connected to the CFO, but his company CFO or the CEO or someone in the board is connected with that. When this is the case, how will that particular SDR or the salesperson use Sales Navigator very well to make that connection better
It's
or
a
a warm intro?
it yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it's a question that gets asked quite often in every salesperson's mind. And I think the difference between instant gratification versus being strategic is going to be the differentiator. I could have today phone numbers of the CFO, and I can pick up the phone and speak to the CFO. Chances are that if I don't know the person and I'm just picking up the phone and speaking, I would not be even talked to. I would probably, the person on the other side would not even pick up the phone. Most likely, if I get a call when I don't have the number saved, I don't even pick up the call, right? So that's what happens when you start picking up and calling. If you could also have email IDs and you start reaching out to people through that email ID, the response rate of email ID is roughly in the range of about 1.5 to 2.5%. So you're sending, say, 1,000 emails, you'll get only 1.5% response rate. The best way that I suggest to a lot of people when they're using LinkedIn and Sales Navigator is to leverage the power of the network that you have. And there are two networks that you have. One is your own individual network, the people that you know who might know the CFO in your example. The second could be the power of the organization that you're part of. If I have to go and talk to a CFO, I may not know the CFO, but there are going to be people in my organization as LinkedIn who may know the CFO of the company that I'm going after. Maybe my CFO is on the board, the same board that this company that I'm targeting their CFO is. In a traditional way, I would not even know that my CFO would know this individual. But this is the difference that LinkedIn Sales Navigator can bring, and I think this is the most unique feature that we have, that we expose the power of not just your network, but your entire organization's network to the seller to go and make connections. I remember a person in my team had reached out to a very senior person in Microsoft to get a connection done in an account that he was working with before he joined Microsoft. And within 5 minutes of sending out that connection request and asking for that connection to be made, there was a meeting that was set. And this is a feature that we have in a product which is called TeamLink connection. And I can just talk a little bit about this by
Yeah.
giving you an example. Um, let's look at this individual, Judson Althoff, and I want to now go to him, right, and see what he does on the platform, right? So there's a small bar here, and I want to see his profile in Sales Navigator. Once I see his profile, there is going to be this little tab that opens up in front of me. This tells me, this gives me a visual representation of my best way to reach out to this individual. The first one that you see is all CXO level connections that I have who are also connected to this individual. The second one also breaks it down into the next level. But what I was talking was team link introductions. The moment I click this, Sales Navigator will throw up everybody in LinkedIn and Microsoft, because Microsoft is my parent company. So anybody who's connected to Judson will automatically show up here, and then I need to just go ahead, figure out who's the best individual that I could reach out and influence to get me in with Judson. And in your example, it's a very similar exercise that I would do for the CFO that I want to touch.
Got it. So in this case, how do you filter down a little further? So for example, I mean, here there's a list of almost 4,000 results. So in this thing,
Yeah.
like, is there any kind of suggestions on like, how do you narrow down your?
So this is a list of everyone who I know and Judson knows. I could simply say that I'm in sales. Let's look at all salespeople. The list comes down to
Up
1,000,
to 1K.
right? I'm in India. I would want to know only folks in India who know this individual, because that's easy access for me. I just put India as a result. I see 37 people who are connected. Now, these are easy people for me to reach out to. I could then simply say, I can pick up anybody, right? Just as an example, I pick
And
up.
some of them, is it like first degree connections or you use second degree? Because I see Satya is at first degree connection, Asta is at a second degree connection.
So this
Or
is
is it?
people who I might not be connected to, but they're connected to Judson because it is part of the same organization. So this is second degree connection. So as I said, there are
Second.
two connections that we play with. One, if I'm reaching out my network, what is that showing? And the second is irrespective of whether I'm connected to the person or not, but there is somebody in the organization that knows that individual. And therefore, the second degree connections also get thrown up. And that is a big pool of individuals that you can go to. So I just simply go ahead and pick up Asta as an example. I'll go and see the profile. I can reach out to Asta saying that this is what I want to do. I want to reach out to this individual. I know that you're connected. This is the reason why I want to reach out. If you know this individual really well, could you put a recommendation for them to connect with me for a
Yes.
15-minute call or a 30-minute call? And that connection, the rate, if you remember, I started talking about if you have a phone number, you speak, you probably get to 1% response. If you have an email ID, the response is somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5%. If you reach out to this route, we have seen our customers getting responses as high as about 75%.
Wow.
So 75% of the reach out that you're doing will get you a response back, because now your reach out is not a cold reach out. You're going through a connection who is known to the other individual, and that means that you're already breaking the barrier of trust. You have established your credibility with the person that you're wanting to reach out. Somebody is vouching for you and reaching out on your behalf means that they trust you, and if the other person also knows the individual, so there's trust and credibility that is already built on day one.
Oh, this is amazing. And this is the action. So what we discussed through for the audience is like, of course, identifying account showing intent, identifying who are the key people, the relationship maps. But then next is like, how do you convert the intent and the relationship maps into action with the right set of focus in terms of who you want to reach out? How do you get a team link connection and how do you convert? And from a sales perspective, as a MarTech product, we are able to very clearly see details into like how many emails get replied, how many calls get connected. In our kind of analysis, even when people do power dials, like up to 400 calls a day, barely 2 to 3% actually get connected, some level of connection. Email reply rates are less than 1%. And the kind of the only way to out of this is not more volume. It's not something like, okay, 400 gets connected, this thing, now I do 4,000, it gets better. It just gets even worse. It's an incremental impact is actually worse. The only way to actually make that better is focus on maybe like 50 connections. Make sure that you have a right introduction. And Abhay mentioned it earlier, it's like delayed gratification. You may not get an action immediately, but you might get some response and some kind of a warm intro in the next 2 days. And over the next 4 days, you might actually get a meeting. So in a sense, you'll still be kind of setting up the same levels of meetings, like 3 to 4 meetings, but you would have far more quality and far more relevance before actually doing this. And this delayed gratification actually works very well. And that's something which we really want to make sure that the audience also takes away from here in terms of like, how do you act on the right set of accounts, making sure you connect to the right set of people, making sure you use the relationship map, and so that your calls or your emails get answered and replied to, rather than it just being a kind of junk. Because it's easy to run through your entire account list within 30 days with power dialing and power emails and sequences, email sequences, automated sequences running, but it's very hard to actually make the same sales in 30 days. So what happens over delayed gratification over 3 months is far better. And you might end up with hitting the quota, and not hitting the quota is just the difference of how you actually approach with your LinkedIn Sales Navigator instead of cold calling. That's one more thing.
And I just wanted to add one thing. Now, in this example, I want to go and reach out to this individual, and I showed the audience a while ago what account IQ looks like. And account IQ was us telling you everything about the account. I quickly wanted to just also show what lead IQ looks like. Just like account IQ was everything about the individual account, lead IQ is everything about the individual that you want to speak within the account. So by press of a button, the system is going to throw everything that you need to know about the individual, that things that they care about, things that are common between. So in this example, it gives you 5 or 6 talking points. What does Judson do? What is his role currently? It tells me that I'm a past colleague from a previous organization. It also talks about the fact that they've just announced a partnership between them and another company. So if that excites you, that could be a way in when you start reaching out to this individual. It tells you so many things, right? So about Microsoft 365, the agentic future, and trust in AI, the things that this individual is talking about, which you should use when you interact and engage with this individual for the first time, because that's what they care about. And if you can build that into the narrative that you have when you're reaching out to sell your product and position your services, there's nothing better than having an alignment.
That makes a lot of sense. And this is exactly like what kind of manual research and manual intelligence can actually give, with much better tooling in your place. And this can actually work with better for people to understand how you need to approach, what you need to approach, because there are tools to build your email copies, tools which can build a very good even call scripting for you to help you with it. But when you have this kind of information from lead IQ and an account IQ, which you even feed into some of these tools, it can actually make a much better contextual conversation, both via email or calls or other messaging modes, so that you have a much better kind of deep insight into actually cracking that account, which otherwise is very hard to. This is pretty awesome. We talked about understanding of like how we filter through, and then go deep into how do you action on once you have the filter, both with your account IQ, lead IQ, and team link connections, which is there.
Yeah.
The next step is like, how do you look at Sales Navigator ROI? Because the teams ask for two things. I give, let's say, 10 licenses, 50 licenses for my team. They start using LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It's not everyone uses the same way. And it's like there's a lot of depth in it, and we can solve some of it with training. But then at the end of the day, it's always a ROI question. My finance officer, financial controller, or the board is going to come back as like, you invested in these tools. What is the kind of outcome? How do we actually look at kind of ROI and outcomes in Sales Navigator?
I think that's the most pressing question that comes every single time that anybody uses any tool, not just Sales Navigator. There are a couple of ways of measuring ROI. One is you could go and figure out how somebody is using the key features of the product. You could figure out how many times have you gone and logged into the product in different stages of the sales cycle, and there are multiple things that we say are the most important things that you should do when you're using Sales Navigator. So what are there course materials that we can send out in the link of this webinar, which talks about what are the 9 best habits that a sales professional should have, which is what we have mapped already into Sales Navigator. So it tells you how is somebody using those specific features, which are mapped to the 7 habits or the 9 habits that I just talked about, right? Beyond this, if you think about from not an admin lens, and you think from a sales leader lens, what do you care most about is once you've bought Sales Navigator and your team has started using Sales Navigator, is there a way that you can figure out, has my relationship strength increased in the accounts that I was going after?
Got
And
it.
for some
And
of
where
our
do you see it?
largest,
Where do you go and see both these details in terms of whether they have reached out enough in terms of connects in this thing, and also relationship strength, which is the
yes.
dashboard within Sales Navigator?
Yeah, so that's where I was coming to. There are 2 things. One, I would want to see whether my relationship strength has increased. And the second thing that I would want to measure, especially since you talked about when you're attached to this, your Sales Navigator is connected to your CRM, whether it is Salesforce or D365 or HubSpot and a couple more coming. Because we are connected to the CRM, we know what stages of your sales cycle, right from the time when you created an opportunity till the time the opportunity is closed, what time between this 2 extremes have you used LinkedIn, have you used Sales Navigator to influence the deal, right? I'll show 2 examples and let me know if that shows up on your screen. So
Yes, it's
these are
just,
not
yeah.
in. So the first one is this is something that we do for some of our largest accounts, Sri. We create a visual map of. So this is not in the tool. This is something that uh, LinkedIn sales team would probably go and do a little bit of research
Can you put it in full
about your
screen?
account. I am. Let me.
Yes.
Is this
Yes. Now
better?
it's, yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is like a visual representation or a heat map. Remember, I talked about the different personas that you care about. So in larger accounts, what we go up and say is give us a list of the top target companies that you care about, and give us a list of the top personas that you want to go and talk to. With that information, I can draw a heat map which says that this is the level of relationship that your sales team members have in these accounts that I've mentioned on the left and these personas. And the way that you see uh, this map on the left and the map on the right is a time series analysis. So I can do a time series analysis of how your relationship was 2 years ago, how your relationship was 1 year ago. If you're somebody new who's wanting to use Sales Navigator, what is it today versus what's going to be 3 months from now? So it's a very tangible KPI that a sales leader can have of measuring their team on, are they building the right relationships in these accounts, and are they building it across the different functions? And that is a visual representation that I think lands really, really well when it lands with a sales leader, and they then use this as a KPI in their monthly meetings, in their weekly meetings, and in their quarterly business reviews. That's one thing that I've seen do really, really well in some of the largest accounts that I have. I'll show another example. Uh, and this is what I see is, this is an example of from a customer where we have shown just a sample. of what we showed to a customer. This is a specific to a particular opportunity that a rep in that organization was going after. This opportunity was created sometime in February 16, 2025. The opportunity closed in this period. And what we were able to do, because we were connected to the CRM, we were able to show back to the CFO and the sales leaders that throughout the period of approximately a year, there were multiple things that happened. There was an a reach out that happened. Somebody viewed somebody's profile. There was an outbound engagement. Somebody came in and looked at you internally. So there was an inbound engagement, which showed me that the buyer intent signal suddenly became higher. Somebody looked at the relationship map. Somebody shared the relationship map. So there was multiple people and teams that came together. So it plots over a period of 12 months some of the most high intensity activities that you've done on the platform.
Mhm.
And once you have a visual representation like this, you can go back into your organization and see which are the best deals that I have considered that have closed in the last 1 year. And then look at a very similar map and figure out what has worked in some of those opportunities, and then make a playbook of sorts, saying that if this has worked in some of my top 10 accounts, can I now replicate this? Can I replicate this for all the top accounts that I'm going after, all the top opportunities that I'm going after? Because there is some method in which these top 10 accounts and top 10 opportunities have converted for me. I just want to experiment and make that as a playbook. Right.
Got
So
it.
I think these two things I just wanted to show to the audience, because I think this is really, really powerful when you want
No,
to
this
go
is
back and show
super
measurement.
powerful in terms of like whenever any company wants to see like whether the teams are using it, it also gives a very clear understanding of like these are the accounts which I want to convert. Let's say 500, 600 accounts. I need to make like 50 to 100 customers out of this. What is the kind of actually engagement, depth of engagement, both at a relationship level for a particular rep and also overall at an account level, how much we have engaged over a period of time so that we are able to actually crack into that account. It makes a lot of difference, especially for companies which are selling into an enterprise sales cycle. And any kind of views like this, so for the audience also, it's like you do a lot of activities. You can actually train your teams to actually engage and work with LinkedIn very well. But this kind of reporting functionality now also comes back to you at a leader level or at a CXO level for you to actually then see like how LinkedIn is working for you, how your team is using LinkedIn, and are you actually moving the needle within an account, because that's what matters at the end of the day. And that's in terms of like across how many accounts, how it has changed over the last year would also be a very good measure. And most importantly, as all sales leaders knows, what you measure is what you can improve, and this is the way how it actually triggers on top of this. This is amazing, Abhay, and this is almost like we are getting to the close of the second episode here. For the audience, this of course there's been a presentation, but you can also ask your questions in terms of like how you have to use specific features within LinkedIn Sales Navigator, specific features within kind of relationship map, and also account and lead IQ. Please drop in your questions so that we can go a little further into this. One more thing also, Abhay, and this is something which you as a sales leader might come across multiple things. Uh, what are the kind of major pushbacks you have from the sales teams when they are kind of assigned to kind of you start using Sales Navigator? Because one of the things which we face within teams or when CXO says is like, I'm totally convinced about the tool. I'm convinced about the utility. I can see if any founder or CXO is also a sales guy in the first place, I can see like how I can use it. Now when I buy it, the teams sometimes don't adopt it enough, and there's a lot of pushback which comes in, or there is a lot of deviation from the existing workflows which come in. What are the kind of key pushback items which come in from your experience? How do you actually handle it from LinkedIn side so that it can help the founders and the CXOs which we speak to?
Yeah, no, it's a very valid question, Shri. I think any tool that you put in, or any technology that you introduce, is a change management. It doesn't help by just buying a product. It helps by what do you do after you've implemented it? What are the KPIs that you have? What is it that the most important thing that you want to measure? So I think the first and the most important thing that I go back and ask all my customers is, what would you want? What is a success looking like for you in a 3 to 6 month period? And it could be very different and very specific for different companies and different leaders. Once I exactly know what success looks like for them, I then tailor my program and my onboarding experience, and I ensure that the team members are bought into the same logic. So I think two things. One, there has to be executive sponsorship on the customer's end, saying that the things that they're telling me is exactly the same things that they're telling their teams, so that when my team goes ahead and starts talking to them, they know that this is one team that is working together. It's not two different teams trying to
Got
push
it.
their own agenda, right? So that is the last thing that we want. So we want synergy. Second, we want absolute clarity on what success looks like. Once we know what success looks like, it is a tailor-made program. In some of our biggest customers, we go ahead and every 3 months do a quarterly business review. Every 6 month, look at what success metric you said. Is it working? Is it not working? Has your priority changed? If your priorities have changed, what should the new pivot be? We do a lot of those interventions at the right time to just ensure that it is not just about adoption of the tool, but it is aligned to what you want to do. The second thing that I want to call out is not every salesperson follows the same playbook. There are different people who have, over the period of time, figured out what works best for them. And
Got it.
we don't want to go ahead and say that you change everything the way you were doing because that was working for you. Just because the company has invested in a tool, you stop everything and start following a new process. We would want to now integrate ourselves into the way of your working. If you have a process, if you have two different processes, if you have three different processes, if your SDRs work differently, your A's work differently, your farmers work differently, we go down to that level of understanding and then suggest from our side that in your day, a day in a life of an SDR, a day in a life of an A, this is how the best use of Sales Navigator is going to look like in different stages of your sales cycle. It could be different when you're at the start, it could be different in the middle, it could be very different at the end.
Got it. This is great, and it's a lot of insights. More importantly, from a leader perspective, it's like how when you sell and what are the process which you can learn from LinkedIn as well. I guess many of our clients and also enterprises across India would really be able to take a lot out of your wisdom, Abhay. Now we are almost at the end of the second episode. We can take questions, which is there, but more importantly, what is there are specific offers for audience here as well, both from a LinkedIn trial, LinkedIn Sales Navigator trial offer and a demo offer. So the LinkedIn Sales Navigator team is available to, if you are keen, post seeing this demo as a sales leader, or more importantly as a CXO or a founder, you would like to check out LinkedIn Sales Navigator and how it can be useful for your company. That's something which we clearly offer, and that's part of our program as a LinkedIn partner, LinkedIn Sales Navigator partner from Factors.ai side, and we can set it up for you. And more importantly, we are also sharing a Precision GTM playbook, which is that, which is like, how do you set up the whole process? How do you start thinking about the process? Because before you even get into a call, one, you have to make alignment, as Abhay said, and also have very clear clarity on what success means for you from using set of tools and technology adoption. And that's something which is also out of the box, which is there. And the last thing, which is something which is totally free and out of the box, is like free Precision GTM assessment from Factors.ai. At Factors.ai, we map the data from your CRM, from your LinkedIn, from your website, and all other activities. And we can give you a very, very clear Precision GTM assessment for you for all the companies which is here. So if you are up to it, please ask for it, and it's completely free and available for you so that you can get onto it. And having said all this, please, this is just still, we are in the second episode of a 4-part series. So please wait for the next 2 series where we go even more in depth on how you can actually make sales better with all the technology and tools specifically offered by LinkedIn and Microsoft in this space. Thank you. And thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Abhay, for
Shay.
making time and going through a very detailed demo. And this is so helpful for all of us here.
Thank you, Shay. I hope it was useful for the audience. If there's any questions, do reach out to either Shrey or me on LinkedIn. Do drop things on the chat so that we can come back to you and ask any questions and answer any questions at a later point in time. Thank you, Shrey.
That's good. Thanks a lot, everyone.